Let's rock and roll. So today we're introducing Home, and the actual timing of the release will be over the weekend. You may have received an email from your administrator that we are updating Giraffe over the weekend. So by Monday, you will have this new experience of Giraffe. The feedback we've been getting over the last few months, and really since we deployed Giraffe 4, has been that our clients are having an explosion of projects, as in there are so many projects that are now within their Giraffe environment that they need some kind of intuitive way to interact with them all. And historically, you would have seen our feature lens that you could use on a portfolio layer to manage several projects at once. However, that can be quite cumbersome and force a bit of an inception type project within a project within a project. So we've had on our minds since really Giraffe released an intelligent home screen that was easy to navigate all of your different projects. And we're really excited tonight, or today, I guess, it's still only 1 p.m., that we finally get a chance to show that off. In order to do that, we had to make some fundamental changes to how the interactive experience with data worked. And so we're going to share a little bit of that as well. Holly, is there any other context you want to add before I share my screen and just get into demoing the new home screen?
No more context, but some housekeeping items. If you would like to ask a question, since we have a pretty good sized group today, if you can throw that in the meeting chat, if I'm able to answer it, I'll answer it there. And if not, I'll throw it over to James. And if we do have time at the end, if you want to hang out, we can probably unmute and ask questions then as well. But just to keep this rocking and rolling while James is doing the demo, if you can just throw those questions in the meeting chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly. All right. So let's open up Giraffe as it is today, because I think we want to understand where we're coming from and where we're moving to. And there are some things that'll be very familiar to you. On the left-hand side, we have layers. That's not going anywhere. We've got this home bar up the top with lots of different things going on, and apps on the right-hand side. That's not changing. There will be some slight changes to the top screen just to make it a bit more of a fundamental experience. But how we would previously navigate multiple projects is through this portfolio layer that we could turn on at any time. So if I turn on my portfolio, you'll see I've got projects all over Orlando and all over the United States. Now, that in and of itself is very powerful. But a big question we often get asked is, okay, well, am I in a project or am I out of a project right now? And that is a slightly or marginally confusing idea. So let's pop over to the next version of Giraffe, which will ship over the weekend. And you'll notice a few things have changed. This top bar where the drop down was in the middle, it's now over here on the left-hand side. And I can still drop that down and I can still see different projects. However, the logo, my organization logo, is now over here on the left-hand side. So if I click on the organization logo, it's actually going to take me to our new home screen. The home screen is basically now, if in the old Giraffe world, what you would think about this as is you're now out of a project, which you previously couldn't do. We're now home. This is a very fundamental idea. We're not in any specific project, and we can see all of our projects at once. So now when I go back to Orlando, not only do I see my projects on the map like I did with the portfolio layer, but I have project cards on the right-hand side. And if there is a saved view within the project, then it will display those saved views as the project thumbnail. I have this beautiful table down here with all of my workspace properties across the top. And as I click on projects, the map navigates to where that project is, and I get this beautiful project card on the right-hand side. Now, if I have views on those projects, and I click on a card, let's find one that has a view. Here we go, Amelia Street project. then I'll get all of my views and attachments showing up down here as well. So I can get a sense of the project before I even dive into the project itself. Very, very cool. Now, a lot of you are managing hundreds of projects. And so just being able to view them like this and interact with them obviously is very helpful. It's very organizing. But you may want to prepare your home screen to be a little more intuitive out of the box, or to help you sift through multiple sites as you go. So we've added these, like I said, this beautiful table down here. And to add a filter to your own portfolio is now a much simplified experience. We can just click on the Add Filter button, pick one of our fields. In this case, I'm going to add my status, and then filter by status type. You can see when I do that, it drops out certain criteria within certain projects that don't meet that criteria. Maybe we want staged projects. Only got 3 in Orlando, but I've got a lot across the nation, and so on. So there's all sorts of different filters you can experiment here with. I can grab multiple of these projects at once. I can share those projects in bulk out with my team or teammates. The fluidity of working with projects now is significantly improved. Further to just filtering, some things that people would like to do often is style their projects up so they can visually and quickly see which projects are in which category or which status. And you can do that by hitting the little color palette over here and selecting things like color my projects by status. So you can see I've now got this beautiful color coordination based on that criteria that we were previously filtering with. And because this is a relatively, this here is our old lens tool, you can then go and add more details. If we want on our labels to include the status and any other field that we might be tracking, and we can now, as we zoom in, you'll see all my labels have status type on them, have the rent per square foot. So really quite an intuitive way to view lots of projects at once. Obviously, if I want to then edit a project, I can click on it and I can click Open Project, and it'll dive me straight into that project. There is a building right there. So that's the home screen. And it now lives up here in the top left. If you ever get lost or stuck within Giraffe and you're not sure if you're in a project or you're in a project that you need to find another project, just hit home. Always go home. There's safety in going home. And when you come back to home, you'll see all of your projects on the map, the project cards on the right-hand side, and this table showing you everything about your portfolio. The use cases here are quite literally limitless. Some use cases, specific use cases that may come under this are comparables tracking. We have a number of different ways to do that, where each project may represent a comparable project, and you have a rent per square foot or a sale price that you're trying to visualize on the map in the context of your project. And a host of others, architectural clients love to see this as showing off their portfolio of work. And if you are on a enterprise SKU, you can even show the individual geometries at the portfolio level. I might pause my screen and just change my workspace so that I can show that off. So I'll go to my home within the different workspace. This is an enterprise workspace, and I'm going to, one of the styling options available to me is to show the individual features within the projects whilst I'm in portfolio mode. So you can see here is my some of the projects that I'm working on in downtown Orlando. Obviously, some of them are silly, some of them are realistic. but very powerful to then be able to look at those and still do our filtering type interactions. Status, years, sold, boom, drops down to just a single project. So once you've set up your home screen, instead of having to set it up every time, you'll most likely want to save it. And this can be, these are some of these features we've been asked for since Giraffe began, like, can I set up a default screen location for my project so that I don't always load up where my IP is, because Giraffe by default will boot up in wherever your laptop is. So if you work in Orlando regularly, but you're living in Daytona Beach, then it can be nice to just locate straight to your portfolio. So everything we've just done there, styling the map with features, adding this filter over here, and I'll get rid of the actual filter for now, just so we can see lots of projects. Adding data layers, because you can keep data layers in your home screen if you would like. If you're one of our customers who subscribes to Regrid, you could add in the Regrid data set. So you can see parcels and whatnot at the same time. FEMA, flood, whatever it might be. Now, let's pretend I want to save my home screen to be my default home screen, and I want to return back here with the same set of labels, the same filters, and the same way of styling up so I can see the individual geometries. Well, all I have to do is define a boundary. I'm going to say, please bring me back to Atlanta every time I load up Giraffe. And I just save the space. And I'm going to call this James's new home screen. And then boom, that's that. So now I have saved a home screen that I'll always return to, that has some default layers, a default way of looking at projects, and is a much more intuitive way to navigate large portfolios. So I'm going to pause there before we go deeper on table. Do we have any questions, Holly, in the chat, or specific things that we want to drill down?
No questions in the chat. I would love to see if you're willing to demonstrate how you might use your home screen to prospect, perhaps using your regrid layer that you added in there.
Yeah, cool. So that's where I was going to go next. Is
Cool.
obviously no, that's okay. So it's good. If there are no other questions, I'll pop straight into that. We've tried to take this same experience of navigating projects of an intuitive data table and being able to add filters on that data table and allow you to do that same experience across any data set. Steve has a question, I think, Holly, if you could look at that and interrupt me if we should answer it.
Yeah, I was about to answer him.
Perfect. So what you can see right now is the table is focused on projects, but we might want to focus our table on a vector data source. And Regrid is obviously one of our great partners here in the US. But any vector data source can use this same process. So I'm just going to click these three dots over here and say Open Lens Controls. And what opening lens control is going to do is focus the table on the Regrid data set. And I often get performance issues on Zoom. So you can see now the Regrid dataset is giving me all of its metadata down here in the table. And I can begin to style that up like I would in if I was doing this within a project. And obviously it makes a lot more sense to be doing this outside of a project. But just like we styled up our portfolio, I may want to style up the parcels. You can see all the parcels right now are colored white, which is not very intuitive. So I'm going to say, don't do that. Color all the parcels by zoning. And let's actually add a label so we can understand the zoning. And just like we added a filter, let's add label details for zoning code. Just like we added a filter on the portfolio, I may then come over here and say, add a filter for zoning is R4. And just like that, I can see there's no R4 in this particular area. but we could start to navigate around and find some R4 if that's the code we care about. Oh, it seems like R4 is all single family. So actually what we want to do is the opposite of that. We want to say R4, the zoning code is not R4, or whatever it might be. And that's going to reveal all the stuff on the other side. So just like you would navigate your portfolio by adding filters and maybe several filters at once, if you were to be doing prospecting or finding sites, the table functions exactly the same way. The other use case we get a lot is from an urban planning point of view, is understanding the characteristics of the buildings that are already there. I'm going to remove regrid just for simplicity's sake and look at some of the buildings in downtown Atlanta. And my performance is terrible right now. Let's see if I've got some windows open I can close. Pause again, 1 second. Unpaused. Much better. All right. So let's take the same approach, just as Holly was talking about with the regrid dataset, and apply it to a different vector dataset. And this vector dataset will be 3D buildings. So just like we had the table showing us our portfolio, I'm going to now say open the lens control on 3D buildings. And you can see I've got this table here showing me the heights and the typology of all the different three-dimensional buildings that we can see on the map. So let's go ahead and style those up. I'm going to say add a style and color all the buildings by their type. Beautiful. And then perhaps we might add a geometric filter. I might actually just draw a boundary to include, or maybe I won't do that. Maybe let's do it by type. Is a building. Not a very helpful description. So let's get rid of building. Let's look at residential. And then maybe let's add in apartments. And really interesting. So if you're looking at existing uses, for instance, in an area, whilst the OpenStreetMap data is not particularly complete, you can see it's leaving out probably quite a lot of data here. The ability to style whatever data you might have and interact with it nicely on a map is fantastic. And ultimately, if you are somebody who wants to take this data and just like when we were in regrid and put it into Excel or put it in a CSV, we can select multiple parts from the table, pop over here to our export button and drop it out as a CSV. And this works the same for your portfolio. We often get questions of people saying, okay, I want a list of prospects or a list of sites that I then can pursue outside of Giraffe. So we've just given you the ability to take your list, build your list by adding filters, select the ones you want, and then export those as necessary. And obviously, if you're an enterprise customer and you want to restrict the ability to export, then you can. And most of our users are wanting to do that functionality. So just for those who joined late, I'm going to pop back to my portfolio. What you're looking at in the home screen is a simplified Giraffe. We are looking at data layers that don't have opacity meters on them. They just have on and off. You can turn them on and off. We are not within a project. Historically in Giraffe, you were always inside of a project, and that was frustrating some users, rightly so. So now we can see our portfolio, and we don't have to be inside of a project. When we look at our portfolio, we can see it in a table, and any field that we've added to our workspace is now here and ready for us to provide an intuitive type Excel experience. If you were thinking about your projects as a list of projects in Excel, you might say, all right, I just want to filter by that column where everything is true, where pursuits are true or where pursuits are false. Or when it was past a certain date. And Giraffe can then go and filter all of your data down to the way you set up those filters, and it functions very similarly to Excel. Then, of course, on the right-hand side, we have the project cards. And when I click on an individual project, it shows me the project card and all of the fields listed out over here, plus any views that you may have had on the project. So that's a short overview of home screen. I think when you use it, it will be very fun. It'll help you orient yourself within Giraffe. You can click the logo here. It goes live on Monday. You can click your own logo and it will take you home. You can save your home screen so that it is always defaulting to the same way of looking at your projects. And we would love to help you configure your own space or your own home space. If you have any questions or if anything's been unclear, now's the time to dive in. Ollie, what's happening on the chat thread?
We're pretty good at answering the questions, but if you wanted to specifically address Steve's question, I think it's a good one. So he was wondering if you can select which projects to include in the home screen, or is it always all of your projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. Particularly if you are building out a big comp database, like I was saying, or you have projects that are not always specific, or you want to show projects that are client specific, can be a really lovely way. And you can actually create multiple home spaces if you would like to filter your projects to different aggregations. So let's take an example. I'll go back to Florida. And here's my portfolio in Orlando. I will create a new space, call this client A. And now this is not my home space anymore. This is like an alternate space. I can configure this exactly to a certification or specification, I mean, that makes sense. So let's pop down to Orlando. And the way we would classify it, if you're tracking things across, if you have lots of different fields like this dummy account does, then we would say, let's add a filter where the client is XYZ or the project type is an industrial building. You can see it's just dropped down to just 6 projects in my entire portfolio and only 1 in Orlando. And this filter will now save with the space with me. So next time I load up the client A space, it'll always load up that set of filters. And as you can see, I've been testing lots of different home spaces. Here's one in Sydney, relocates the screen to Sydney, drops it down to 6 projects. Let's look at the DTA space. Project type is, and this is kind of an interesting one where we set this up so that we could make it easy for a user that doesn't want to go in and add their own filter to suggest some ways they can filter the dataset. So project type is empty at the moment, but I can see quite intuitively, okay, well, project type is, that's a great way to filter. Let's look at all the commercial projects. Okay, well, there aren't any in Orlando. Let's look at the high-rise projects. It's 2 in Orlando. Let's look at the low-rise projects. Industrial projects. So just a nice sort of Zillow-y type way of interacting with your project data. think that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. So there's a couple of things I've shown that are only available on the enterprise SKU, and I'll just cover off what those are. Having multiple spaces beyond just home, that's an enterprise feature. And then displaying your portfolio as three-dimensional geometries, that is also an enterprise feature. Everything else we've shown you, home screen, navigating the home screen, adding filters, seeing everything on the right-hand side, those are all features that are available in every SKU. All right, well, if there are no more questions, we will leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time. We hope that this feature makes Giraffe even more of a joy for you to use instead of just being at the project level, at the whole portfolio level. Please get in touch with us if you want to check it out, if you want to do a personalized demo, if you're interested in applying it in your particular Giraffe profile. We love talking to customers, so please don't hold back. Thanks, team. Talk to you soon.